Hello everyone, Hugh here coming to you from Farringdon. Now, if you've ever commuted through Farringdon and looked out this wonderful window that looks down onto the Metropolitan and Circle lines, you might have noticed that, an abandoned track bed leading into two abandoned tunnels. But what is this? Well, that's what the subject of this video is all about. Today, we're going to look at the story of, and the remains of, the Thameslink Moorgate branch. To understand why Thameslink ran to Moorgate, we first need to take a look at the City Widened Lines. Now, this subject has been discussed extensively by many other people on YouTube in the past, so I'm going to skip ahead mainly to the 1970s, when the background to Thameslink running to Moorgate begins, and then after that, we're going to take a look at what physically remains of the branch today. The City Widened Lines were opened in 1866 to allow trains to transfer from the main lines out of King's Cross and St Pancras onto the newly built route of the Metropolitan Railway into Farringdon and eventually Moorgate, as well as connecting onto the Cross City Railway through Ludgate and Blackfriars onto the tracks of the London Chatham and Dover Railway and the South Eastern Railway, with this route now forming today's Thameslink core. However, by the 1970s, the makeup of the widened lines had changed significantly from their Victorian heyday. In the early 1970s, services on the City Widened Lines largely consisted of diesel Midland and Great Northern commuter services running from Bedford, Luton, Welwyn and Hertford through connecting tunnels in order to bypass the termini of King's Cross and St Pancras, in order to relieve suburban commuter pressure from both stations, as shown on this self-made map of the layout of the widened lines in around 1970, with BR lines in black and the corresponding Metropolitan line in reddish purple. The services off the Midland route would take the same route that Thameslink trains coming off the Midland Main Line would take today, while the Great Northern commuter services would run through a station adjacent to King's Cross Main Line station known as York Road, and then join the widened lines at the former Metropolitan Railway King's Cross station, later known as King's Cross Midland City and finally King's Cross Thameslink. As a fun fact, the widened lines tunnel at King's Cross makes a cameo appearance in the latest Mission Impossible movie, making it the second time a Thameslink core related thing has appeared in a Mission Impossible movie. Can you have a guess what the other one is? These diesel services into Moorgate would last until 1976, when the Great Northern services were discontinued following the Great Northern Suburban Electrification Project, which electrified the lines from King's Cross to Hertford and Royston. New electric commuter services to Moorgate would instead be diverted at Finsbury Park into the Northern City Line, which had been handed over to British Rail from London Underground the year before. The old tunnels and platforms at King's Cross were eventually shut down, and sadly most traces have largely vanished due to several re-signallings and heavy regeneration over the years. The services off the Midland to Luton and Bedford would cease in 1979, but this was only going to be a temporary measure. British Rail soon put into action the Bedpan electrification scheme that would see an upgrade to the rather dilapidated commuter service between London and Bedford, with the electrification and upgrading of the route from Bedford to St Pancras and the widened lines to Moorgate, all as part of an eventual plan to start running cross-London services via the Snow Hill tunnels by 1988. Electric services along the line began in July 1983, with Class 317 trains replacing the old DMU and loco hauled services on what was now called the Midland City Line, running services from Bedford to Moorgate. However, this name and service would be very short-lived, as in 1988 the Snow Hill tunnels between Blackfriars and Farringdon were reopened, and the new Thameslink service commenced, allowing for cross-city trains to start running between Bedford and Brighton using dual-voltage Class 319s. Despite this, the branch from Farringdon to Moorgate via Barbican remained open, receiving Thameslink services to and from Luton and Bedford, although it was kept to weekdays only and eventually peak hours only. The death knell for the line came with the commencement of the Thameslink programme in 2009, which sought to upgrade and improve the Thameslink service with high-frequency trains all day with a huge capacity boost. This meant that the platforms at Farringdon Station had to be extended, not only to accommodate longer Thameslink trains, but also to create an interchange with a new station on the recently approved Crossrail project. Due to the constricted layout of the station, the platforms could only be extended in one direction, which meant that the Moorgate branch would have to be cut off, as the junction with the Thameslink core lay immediately south of the existing station. So, on March 20th, 2009, at around 7:20 p.m, the very last Thameslink service departed Platform 5 at Moorgate, bound for Kentish Town. In quite a cheeky move, First Capital Connect chose Unit 319364 to operate the service, which had been decked out in a special Thameslink programme livery. And to mark the occasion, a countdown timer had been installed in the station, reminding passengers that the service would be ceasing and the Thameslink programme engineering works. Since 2009, the majority of the route has sat mostly untouched and abandoned. So, let's go back to me at Farringdon to take a look at what remains of the Thameslink branch from Farringdon to Moorgate. So when it comes to looking at remains of the line, immediately here at Farringdon the thing to notice is the abandoned track bed leading into twin tunnels. Now this is because where I'm standing now, back 20 years ago, this didn't exist. This whole building I'm standing in now didn't exist, but we'll get onto that when I go down to the platforms in a minute. The only other thing to spot up here are these two bizarre little tracks here. Now, I'm not exactly sure what these are, but I believe that they are siding tracks for the tube that many years ago used to connect onto the widened lines into Moorgate, and I imagine today they're just used as a reversing point if they need to turn a train round here at Farringdon. Although, I don't know if that's actually the case. If you know, please let me know in the comments. So I have now come down to platform 3 here at Farringdon, and where I'm standing now is quite a significant location, as 15 years ago, where I'm standing now, well, none of this around here existed. That's because this whole area was constructed for the Thameslink programme and the Elizabeth line, which explains the Mexican standoff between the station buildings outside. And, well, until 2009, the platforms actually physically ended right there at that brick arch which marks the road above the station. So back when the branch was in use, where I'm standing now was actually the junction where the trains would branch off. So there's some old photos that are shown here of the end of the platforms here at Farringdon, and you can see the junction where they used to go to Moorgate, and well, sadly there's not really much left given that it's all been completely built over. So for context, until 2009, where I'm standing now used to be the very end of the Thameslink platforms here at Farringdon, and all this stuff back here was built right afterward. And well, if you would have looked over there back then, you would have seen the tracks curving off toward Moorgate. Anyway, unfortunately that's all there really is to see here at Farringdon, as obviously the main reason why the branch closed down was to allow this massive extension to the station to be constructed. Let's now get on the tube to go to our next stop, which is Barbican. So, we have now arrived at Barbican, and well, as you can visibly see, there is a lot more physical evidence of the railway still here. Mainly the fact that the platforms are still in place. In fact, this one I'm standing on right now is still technically in public use because it connects onto the tube over there, and the other platform is still in situ over there. The track, still there. Well, I say most of the track. Right in front of me, some of the track heading toward Farringdon has now been removed for reasons we'll get onto in a minute. And obviously one thing that has also been removed is the overhead catenary cables, which I believe were removed soon after the line shut down. I think you can still see the points in the platform where the gantries were mounted, but yeah, that's one thing that has gone. The old footbridge going to the platform number 4, I think, over there, that's still in situ. In fact, the corridor is still visible from the ticket hall. It's only blocked off by a barrier and a sign, and there even still is, 17 years later, a Thameslink programme leaflet rack still standing there 17 years after Thameslink last served this station, alongside a historical plaque. So it's all very good. So if you know a fair bit about Barbican Station, you'll of course know that it is connected to Farringdon Elizabeth Line Station via a lift connection. But this also ties into the story of the Thameslink Moorgate branch, as this tunnel that the lift was constructed inside was the former Widened Lines tunnel that the Thameslink used to run through. And while it seems to have been completely redone, because I believe when they were building what was then called Crossrail, they used this area as an access point in order to help construct the station. So you can actually, when walking toward the Elizabeth line here, get a good view into the tunnels that used to head to Farringdon. So walking back towards the station entrance, you can see that the awning, all still in place. I presume, judging by the architecture, that this was added with the upgrade electrification scheme in the early 80s because of the way it's designed when this line from Bedford was electrified. You can still see the footbridge, still in situ, that linked platform 4 to the rest of the station over here, and actually just further down you can see the entrance to the old staircase, and an old platform 3 sign and an old platform 4 sign still there after 17 years. Unbelievable. So, like the western end of the platform, the eastern end is also fenced off because obviously the line isn't physically connected to any other line, so you can't run trains down it regardless. But the difference is, here, the track is still in situ, and I believe it still carries on all the way to Moorgate. But either way, that's it for all the amazing stuff that there is to see here at Barbican. It's now time to get back onto the tube and go to our final stop, which is Moorgate.
Metropolitan Line choice 2.
Okay, so we have now made it to Moorgate. And well, here at Moorgate, what exactly is left of the Thameslink platforms? Well, all of it pretty much. They're still here. It's very rare you get an opportunity to actually walk along one of these because, well, this is technically a public area because these platforms are used by tube trains. This one's shut off, for the record. It's gated off over there. But yeah, this is the old platforms. It's also quite funny that there isn't a yellow line painted, so they can't nag you about standing behind the yellow line. But yeah, it's all pretty much still in situ. There's even an old roundel still in situ over there, although as an art motive, TfL have been putting up historical ads all over the place, although I think these date back to 2013. I'm not quite sure, but there's some nice historical roundels here too. Like this one that shows the old diamond logo of the Metropolitan Railway just before it merged with London Transport. Something notable I've spotted is that the buffers at the end of the tracks seem to have been removed, as I've looked at photos for when the platforms were in use, and there were buffers at the end, so the buffers have been taken out. Like at Barbican, it also appears that the overhead catenary cables have been removed because obviously the tracks aren't connected, it's valuable metal, they can just take it out. But other than that, and obviously departure boards and signs, it pretty much is all still here. The track's still here. I think the signals have been taken out, but the tracks are still here, and heck, like at Barbican, you can just walk along here willy-nilly. It's nuts. So I've managed to walk to the end of the incredibly long platforms. It's crazy how long these are. Well, then again, they're designed to take 8-carriage trains, and well, just like at Barbican, fenced off. Although it does appear that you can see the tunnel going up through there, that the tracks do still exist all the way through there. So yeah, it's all still in situ here. Sadly, I can't find any evidence of signalling or stop markers here. I think all of that has been taken out, and obviously I can't go beyond this gate. It's private. It's there's a no trespassing sign, so that is as far as we can go, unfortunately. And a very, very off-putting noise has just occurred, so I think it's time to turn around. So a lot of you might be wondering, what could we do with this bit of track, and could we reuse it for Thameslink? Well, Jago's already done a video on that I highly recommend you go watch, but there's also a bit of an elephant in the room, a very purple elephant in the room, as basically the Elizabeth line between Farringdon and Liverpool Street covers exactly the same route. It links up at Barbican and it links up here at Moorgate with the Liverpool Street station. So the reality is, unfortunately, with the Elizabeth line being open now, I don't really see a future for this track ever being used again, which is a real shame, but the Thameslink program has proven to be such a big success, so I guess it was a worthy sacrifice to shut this branch down. And also, it's not like you can't get between Farringdon and Moorgate anyway. there is the tube. And well, there you have it. From 1866 right up until 2009, trains from Luton, Bedford, Stevenage, Hatfield and Welwyn used to come into Moorgate and terminate right here on platforms 5 and 6 on the widened lines. And well, unfortunately, there really isn't a reason to bring this service back. A, because the Thameslink programme has blocked off the original route and the Thameslink programme has provided a high frequency service already. B, the Elizabeth line covers the route almost entirely from Farringdon to Moorgate using its Farringdon and Liverpool Street stations. C, the tube connects all three stations already. And D, it's not like Moorgate doesn't have National Rail already, as of course it has the Northern City line over there. So sadly, it does look like that trains will never return to the City Widened Lines to Moorgate. Either way, I really hope you enjoyed this video, this little looking back at the Thameslink Moorgate branch. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Big thanks to our supporters as well, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye!